February 2024. A 20-year-old woman, Melody Hoffman, steps out of her Iowa home late on a Saturday night.
Mm-hmm.
She was close to her mother, Megan, but like many of us, she had parts of her life that remained private.
Yeah, absolutely.
What followed in those dark hours is a story that is frankly difficult to comprehend. A sequence of events that led to a young life tragically cut short.
And that's what we're diving into today. This deep dive will explore the crucial details and potential motivations surrounding Melody Hoffman's murder.
Right.
We'll be looking at the timeline, the evidence, and the shocking revelations that emerged. It's a case filled with layers of deceit and, well, a truly disturbing outcome.
So let's set the scene. We're in Moran, Iowa, Saturday, February 17, 2024. It seemed like a pretty typical day for Melody and her mom, Megan.
Right, they went grocery shopping, had tacos for lunch. Sounds pretty normal.
Yeah, watched a movie together until about 11 p.m. Megan thought her daughter was in for the night. But then, 11:07 p.m., her phone buzzes. It's a notification from the Live 360 app. Melody's phone signal showed she'd just left the house.
And that app, for those who don't know, it gives you real-time location tracking. So Megan knew immediately Melody wasn't where she thought she was.
Exactly. And security footage actually confirmed Melody leaving just a few minutes before that notification popped up.
Oh, interesting.
And the video even caught her phone screen lighting up briefly right as she was leaving. Maybe a message? A call?
Possibly. So her mother, Megan, must have felt uneasy.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Straight away, she texted Melody, just, "Are you kidding me right now?" You know, simple, but filled with concern.
And Melody replied.
Quick reply, "I'll be back."
Yeah.
Just that. A simple promise that tragically wouldn't be kept.
Wow.
Megan kept texting, trying to get her to come home, all while watching her phone's location on that Live 360 app.
So she could see where Melody was going.
Initially, yeah. It showed Melody heading northwest towards a place called Morgan Creek Park. Then the signal moved back towards Moran, near their home. Around 1 a.m., the phone pinged near a local apartment complex. And then, nothing. The location tracking was suddenly disabled.
That's a big red flag right there, isn't it? That digital trail, even just that early part, it's telling.
Totally.
The fact that her location services were switched off becomes, looking back, a really significant sign something was wrong. Why turn it off unless you don't want someone to know where you are?
Precisely. So Megan then switched to Snapchat, messaging Melody, asking her again and again to turn the location back on.
And did she get replies?
She did. Things like "on my way" and "almost there," and then "leave the door open for me."
Which might sound okay on the surface.
Right. But her mom later said the phrasing, the way they were written, just didn't feel like Melody's usual style. And crucially, when Megan tried calling her daughter's phone, it just went unanswered.
That's a key point. That subtle change in communication style plus the ignored calls. Those small details, when you put them together, they start painting a much clearer and, more disturbing picture.
It really suggests that Megan probably wasn't talking to her daughter anymore in those last messages.
Exactly. It points to someone else potentially having the phone.
And the very last communication from Melody's phone wasn't even a text message. At 3:13 a.m., Megan gets this automated emergency impact notification from Apple.
Oh, the crash detection feature.
Yeah, exactly. The kind that senses a severe impact, like a car crash, and automatically messages emergency contacts.
And it gives a location, right?
It did. Megan drove straight out there.
Yeah.
And she found Melody's iPhone broken, face down on the entry ramp to Highway 100.
Just the phone.
Just the phone. The case was gone. And all the recent activity, call logs, messages, everything, deleted.
Wow. Finding the phone like that, smashed and wiped clean.
Right.
That strongly suggests someone deliberately trying to cover their tracks, hiding what happened.
Yeah.
The safety feature that's meant to help in an emergency kind of became a signal of violence instead. Chilling.
It really is. So the next morning rolls around. We're about 30 miles south of Moran now, at a place called Lily Lake. A woman named Amy Robus makes a truly horrific discovery.
What did she find?
Well, a couple had actually seen something first and were distressed. They alerted Amy, who then called 911. She described finding a woman face down in the grass wearing only underwear.
Oh, God.
And she saw what looked like injuries on her back. But importantly, Amy noted there was nothing to suggest the woman had been in the lake water.
So, not a drowning.
No. That woman was Melody Hoffman.
The scene itself sounds deeply troubling. The state she was found in, the minimal clothing, no signs of drowning. It immediately points away from an accident, doesn't it?
Definitely.
And the injuries suggest a violent assault that probably happened somewhere else, not at the lick.
And the medical examiner's report confirmed everyone's worst fears. Melody's cause of death was strangulation.
Strangulation.
But there was more. Numerous stab and slash wounds, and tragically, many of those were inflicted after she was already dead.
Post-mortem wounds, that's incredibly brutal.
Yeah. There were also marks on her wrists and hands, indicating she'd been tied up, restrained. And while her undergarments were sort of disarranged, the ME found no physical evidence of sexual assault. Investigators thought the scene was staged to look like one.
Staged, so an attempt to mislead.
Seems likely. Also, the area immediately around where Melody was found, it was relatively undisturbed, which again suggests the actual murder of the struggle happened somewhere else.
Right. Those post-mortem wounds you mentioned, they can sometimes indicate extreme rage or maybe an attempt to hide the real cause of death or just pure cruelty.
Yeah.
And the staging, plus the fact Lily Lake seems like a secondary location,
Yeah.
it just adds layers. It points to calculation behind the brutality.
So to really understand this, we need to know a bit more about Melody herself. She was born in Cedar Rapids back in 2003. Friends and family described her as cheerful, very trusting. She dreamed of a career helping people, maybe working in a nursing home. She went to Liberty High School, did a brief stint at Kirkwood Community College, but studying became a challenge.
Why was that?
Melody had been diagnosed with a mild intellectual disability. Essentially, her mental capacity was closer to that of a 12 to 14-year-old.
Okay, that's a really important detail.
It is, because it likely affected her judgment, her decision-making, and made her very trusting nature a real vulnerability.
Absolutely. That developmental stage would impact how she perceived risks, understood other people's intentions. Her trustfulness, while a lovely quality, could sadly make her more susceptible to manipulation.
But despite those challenges, people said she was incredibly loving, very caring, a real extrovert, made friends easily, seemed fearless.
Sounds like a bright personality.
Yeah, and she loved animals. She even volunteered at the local animal shelter.
That's nice.
And on that last night, shortly after she left home, she posted a Snapchat video. Just her in the back of a car, singing along to music, looking completely carefree.
Oh, wow. That's heartbreaking knowing what came next. That image of her just happy and innocent. It's such a stark contrast.
It really is. It just underscores how sudden and violent the end was.
So the investigation begins. Where did the police start looking?
Well, they pretty quickly zeroed in on a person of interest. Her 20-year-old ex-boyfriend, McKinley Lisma. People called him Ken.
Okay, the ex-boyfriend. Tell me about their relationship.
It had been pretty brief, actually. Ended back in December, just a couple of months before. But the breakup hit Melody hard.
Breakups can be tough. Was there more to it?
Yeah, it got complicated. Melody found out McKinley had gotten back together with his ex-girlfriend, Dakota, and Dakota was pregnant.
Okay, that definitely complicates things. A love triangle situation, potentially.
Potentially.
Oh.
There were some heated exchanges between Melody and McKinley after she found out. She'd even threatened to call the police on him at one point.
So, tension there already. This sounds like a difficult breakup made way more complex by the pregnancy, the other girlfriend. It immediately gives investigators a potential motive, right? And a clear connection.
Exactly. And adding to that picture, sometime after the breakup, Melody got this really nasty, threatening text message from an unknown number.
What did it say?
Something like, "I hate you and your family ain't safe." Really aggressive.
And did they know who sent it?
Melody's mom, Megan, strongly suspected it was McKinley.
Yeah.
He was really the main source of conflict and stress in Melody's life at that time.
Makes sense. So, when Megan got that emergency notification from the phone, did she contact McKinley?
She did. He was the first person she called. And he told her he hadn't seen Melody, hadn't heard from her at all.
Denied everything, which it's pretty common initially, I suppose.
Right. But as we're about to see, those denials didn't hold up for long against the evidence.
Let's hear it.
So McKinley told both Megan and the police the same story. They weren't together anymore. He hadn't seen her. Flat out lies.
How did they know?
Traffic cameras. Lots of them. Footage clearly showed his car, a blue Honda Accord, right there in Moran, picking Melody up after 11:20 p.m. that Saturday night.
Undeniable proof, then. Picked her up.
Exactly. And more cameras tracked his car. First, heading towards Morgan Creek Park, then back towards Moran near Melody's house, and then later, heading towards Amana where Lily Lake is.
Wow, so the cameras basically mapped out his movements with her. That completely blows his story apart.
Completely. And it wasn't just the cameras.
Cell phone data, too.
Yep. Cell phone data backed it all up. showed the path of McKinley's phone matching the car's movements seen on the cameras.
Okay, so the digital footprint was strong.
Very. The data showed one last stop before he apparently went home, a Quick Start convenience store in Cedar Rapids.
And did they have footage there?
They did. Security video caught McKinley and another person buying cigars.
Another person, not Melody.
No, not Melody, another individual. By this point, the police had a search warrant for McKinley's car.
Right.
And McKinley agreed to be interviewed. He even waived his right to have a lawyer present.
Okay.
And in that interview, he still insisted he hadn't seen Melody that weekend, had nothing to do with her murder.
Even with the police likely knowing about the camera footage by then. Bold move.
Or desperate. Because while he was sticking to that story in the interview room...
They were searching his car?
Exactly. And the search of that Honda trunk, it uncovered some truly horrifying clues.
What did they find? Lay it out for us.
Okay, in the trunk, a pink shirt stained with blood, black leggings, the kind Melody often wore, an Apple Watch band, also stained.
Wow. Her belongings.
Yeah. Plus, several pairs of gloves. They later linked those to a purchase made recently at Walmart. Duct tape with Melody's hair stuck to it, her phone cover, and a piece of paracord.
Paracord, like climbing rope.
Exactly. Strong stuff. Investigators suspected that might have been the murder weapon used for the strangulation.
Good Lord. Anything else in the car?
In the front of the car, yes. Officers found a machete sitting by the driver's seat.
A machete.
And packaging for 2 more machetes, plus a pocket knife and another roll of duct tape.
3 machetes, duct tape, gloves, the rope, her bloody clothes. That trunk sounds like a collection of incriminating evidence. It strongly links him, doesn't it?
Overwhelmingly. Her clothes, the blood, the potential weapon, the means to restrain her, and the multiple machetes and gloves, it suggests planning.
Yeah, premeditation. So the trunk basically held Melody's things right alongside weapons and restraints. How did McKinley react when they confronted him with that list?
Well, faced with all that, his story completely flipped. Dramatically.
Okay, here we go. What did he say now?
He suddenly claimed that a new friend named Dakota Van Patten had been with him that night.
Ah, the other person at the Quick Star, maybe.
Presumably. And McKinley claimed Dakota was solely responsible for Melody's murder.
Just blamed it all on Dakota.
Yep. Yeah, he alleged Dakota forced him at gunpoint to tie Melody up.
Forced him? Why? What was the supposed motive for Dakota?
McKinley claimed Dakota suspected Melody had money. He even mentioned that Melody had apparently offered to buy McKinley a PlayStation 5 at some point.
Wait, hold on. Dakota allegedly killed her because he thought she had cash, possibly related to a PS5 offer she made to McKinley. That sounds incredibly thin.
It does, doesn't it? It feels like a really weak, almost unbelievable justification for that level of violence. Raises huge doubts about this new story.
Definitely. So this introduction of Dakota Van Patten feels like McKinley trying desperately to shift the blame, right?
That's certainly how it looks. McKinley went on to describe stopping at Morgan Creek Park,
where the phone tracking first showed them going.
Right. He claimed Dakota hit Melody there, took her phone, and Dakota sent those misleading texts to her mother.
Trying to explain away the phone evidence.
Exactly. And then he claimed he was powerless to stop Dakota from killing Melody later at Lily Lake. Just couldn't do anything.
That whole forced participation story, it just begs the question, right?
Easy.
If you were truly forced at gunpoint to be part of a kidnapping and murder, why wouldn't you report it as soon as you possibly could?
Exactly. His failure to go to the police immediately, if his story was true, casts enormous doubt on it.
Yeah.
If you're genuinely coerced, your first instinct would be to get help, tell someone.
Yeah, that silence is damning in itself. Okay, so they have McKinley's story pointing at Dakota. What about forensic evidence? Did they test the items from the car?
They did. And this is crucial. When they tested the potential weapons, the machete, the rope maybe, they found Dakota Van Patten's DNA on them.
Ah, so Dakota did handle them.
It seems so.
Yeah.
But here's the twist. They did not find McKinley's DNA on those specific items.
No DNA from McKinley on the weapons. That complicates the picture.
It does. Now, it's important to understand the absence of his DNA doesn't 100% rule him out from having touched them. DNA transfer isn't always guaranteed, you know.
Sure, okay. What about fingerprints?
Fingerprint evidence didn't exclude McKinley from having touched some of the items found. So maybe prints. but not DNA on the weapons themselves.
Okay, so Dakota's DNA is on the weapons. McKinley's isn't definitively, but he can't be excluded by prints. It links Dakota strongly, but doesn't fully clear McKinley either, especially with all the other evidence.
Right. It establishes Dakota's connection, but doesn't erase McKinley's presence or the items in his car.
So what happened with Dakota? Did they investigate him?
They did. They got a warrant and searched Dakota's residence.
And did they find anything?
Yes. They found more of that same type of climbing rope, the paracord.
Yeah.
They found Melody's eyeglasses.
Her glasses. At Dakota's place. That's another strong link.
Definitely. They also found a machete there. And some other items belonging to Dakota's brother were also recovered: a pistol holster, ammo, some knives.
Okay. So more weapons, more rope, and Melody's glasses.
Correct. And based on all this, Dakota Van Patten was arrested and charged with murder too.
Makes sense. The evidence trail led right to him as well. But wait, you mentioned 3 machetes were bought? Right. And the packaging found in McKinley's car?
Good point. That brings us to a third person involved.
A third.
An 18-year-old named Logan Kimpton.
Logan Kimpton. How does he fit in?
Remember the Walmart purchase? The gloves, maybe the machetes too.
Yeah.
Surveillance footage from Walmart showed McKinley, Dakota, and Logan Kimpton together, buying 3 machetes and multiple pairs of gloves just before Melody disappeared.
All 3 of them. Buying weapons together? That is
Yeah.
huge. That screams coordinated plan.
It really does. It places all 3 together, acquiring the tools right before the crime.
So what did Logan say when the police talked to him?
Well, Logan testified that, yes, all 3 of them had planned Melody's murder together.
He admitted to the plan.
He did, but he claimed he chickened out at the last minute and didn't actually participate in the kidnapping or the murder itself.
He backed out. Do they have anything to support that?
His phone data actually corroborated part of his story. It placed him near his girlfriend's apartment around the time the murder likely happened, not near Lily Lake.
Okay, so maybe he wasn't physically there for the final act.
Possibly. But because he admitted to being part of the planning phase.
He was still charged.
Yes, charged with willful injury and conspiracy. Even if he didn't deliver the final blow, his testimony confirmed there was a premeditated plan involving all 3 of them.
Wow. So McKinley, Dakota, and Logan, a planned murder. What happened next legally? Did they go to trial?
McKinley and Dakota both pleaded not guilty. But McKinley pushed for a speedy trial, which actually happened relatively quickly, starting in November 2024.
Okay. And the prosecution's case, what was their main argument?
They opened by emphasizing just how brutal the crime was, especially highlighting what likely happened at Morgan Creek Park before they even got to Lily Lake. And they pointed out the apparent lack of any sort of logical or understandable motive for such violence.
Yeah, the motive does seem murky, beyond maybe the relationship issues. Focusing on the brutality makes sense, though. And what was McKinley's defense?
His lawyers stuck to the story he eventually told police.
Yeah.
Yes, he was there, but he didn't do it. He didn't actively participate in the murder.
The I was just present defense. That's a really risky strategy, isn't it?
Extremely risky, especially when you're the one whose car was used, who picked her up, who had her belongings and blood in the trunk.
Right. It asks the jury to believe he was just passively standing by while this horrific thing unfolded, maybe under duress from Dakota.
Exactly. Now, during the trial prep and autopsy, another really significant and frankly tragic piece of information came to light.
What was that?
The autopsy revealed that Melody was either newly pregnant or had very recently been pregnant.
Pregnant? Oh my gosh. Did anyone know? Did her mother know?
No. It was apparently a secret she hadn't shared with anyone, not even her mom.
Wow. That adds a whole potential new layer to the motive question, doesn't it?
A huge layer, especially considering McKinley's situation.
With Nakia, his other girlfriend, also being pregnant.
Exactly. So the prosecution developed a theory around this.
Let me guess. McKinley found out Melody was pregnant too.
That was their theory. That McKinley learned about Melody's pregnancy, realized he potentially had 2 pregnant girlfriends, Nakia and Melody, and decided he needed to get rid of the problem.
So the prosecution argued that was his motive. He enlisted Dakota and Logan to murder Melody to eliminate her and the pregnancy, solving his complicated romantic mess.
That was the prosecution's core argument for motive. A selfish, violent response to an unexpected, difficult situation.
Makes a certain kind of cold sense, I suppose. What did the defense say to counter that?
They hit back hard. They argued there was 0 concrete proof that McKinley even knew Melody was pregnant. She kept it a secret, right?
True, her own mother didn't know.
And Nikia's testimony became really important here. She testified that she'd actually given McKinley an ultimatum before the murder.
An ultimatum.
Yeah, basically told him he had to choose her or Melody.
Ah. So the defense could argue that was the pressure point, not necessarily a pregnancy he didn't know about. Nikia's ultimatum provided a different, maybe more immediate reason for him to want Melody out of the picture.
Precisely. It raises a valid point about the lack of direct evidence for the pregnancy motive.
And what about the paternity of Nikia's baby? Was that cleared up?
It was. Nikia confirmed that at the time Melody died, she herself wasn't certain who the father was. But later DNA tests proved McKinley was not the father of Nikia's child.
Not the father. Wow, that really undermines the prosecution's main motive theory then, doesn't it?
Significantly, if he wasn't the father of Nikia's baby, the whole two pregnant girlfriends scenario driving the murder becomes much less convincing.
Yeah, Nikia's testimony throws a huge wrench into that narrative. The uncertainty about her baby's father at the time just complicates McKinley's potential mindset even more.
Absolutely. The trial also heard from some of McKinley's friends and acquaintances, people named T. Meyer, Brendan Monson, Trevor Wise.
What did they testify about?
They recounted hearing incriminating statements,
Yeah.
allegedly made by McKinley, Dakota, or Logan after the murder. Things that suggested their involvement.
Okay, witness testimony about admissions. That can be powerful.
It can be. But the defense went after their credibility during cross-examination. They pointed out inconsistencies in the stories, raised questions about the witnesses' memories, how reliable their recollections really were about who said exactly what.
Right. Witness testimony, especially about conversations recalled later, can be shaky. Human memory isn't perfect.
Exactly. So the defense effectively tried to cast doubt on whether these witnesses could reliably pinpoint McKinley making direct confessions, as opposed to maybe just hearing general talk among the group.
So the motive was shaky, some witness testimony questionable. What about harder evidence?
Well, the digital evidence.
Mm.
That was particularly strong for the prosecution.
You mentioned the phone tracking earlier. What else?
McKinley's phone search history.
Mm.
In the hours right before he picked Melody up that night.
Yeah. What was he searching for?
Things like face coverings, ski masks, rubber gloves.
Okay. That sounds like preparation for concealment.
Definitely. And he also searched for Morgan Creek Park and Lily Lake.
The specific locations involved in the crime searched just before.
Right.
That is extremely incriminating.
It really is. That digital footprint paints a picture of premeditated planning, right down to the locations. It suggests he was actively researching and getting ready.
You can't easily explain those searches away. What else was on his phone?
Even more disturbing, photographs.
Photos of what?
They found pictures on McKinley's phone. One showed Dakota wearing Melody's glasses.
Wearing her glasses like a trophy.
Possibly. Another showed Dakota inside McKinley's car holding a BB gun.
Okay.
And then there was a truly shocking photo. Melody, with duct tape covering her mouth, and she had a bloody nose.
Oh my God. A
Yeah.
photo of her bound and injured on his phone.
Yes. Taken sometime before her death, obviously.
That's horrifying. It offers this chilling glimpse into what was happening, and it directly implicates McKinley in her abduction and assault, surely. He had the photo.
It strongly suggests his direct involvement, yes. Deeply disturbing evidence for the jury to see. It corroborates the other findings and really hammers home the prosecution's case against him.
I can only imagine. So, closing arguments. How did the prosecution wrap it all up?
They went back over McKinley's history with Melody, how she had apparently wanted a future with him. They tied together the digital evidence, the items in the car, the questionable testimony, the photos, and basically said, look, regardless of the exact motive, the evidence proves he and Dakota murdered her together.
Right. Connecting all the dots. Even if the why remained a bit fuzzy, the who and how seemed clear from their perspective.
Exactly. They argued the sheer weight of circumstantial and digital evidence pointed squarely at McKinley's guilt.
And the jury. What did they decide?
After deliberation, the jury came back with a verdict. Guilty.
Guilty on all counts.
Guilty of first-degree murder, guilty of first-degree kidnapping, and guilty of conspiracy to commit a forcible felony.
So they found the prosecution's case convincing, despite the uncertainties around the motive.
It seems so. They believed beyond a reasonable doubt that McKinley was responsible for Melody's death and everything that led up to it.
And the sentencing.
At the sentencing hearing, Melody's mother, Megan Hoffman, gave a victim impact statement.
That must have been incredibly difficult.
Unimaginably so. Reports say it was profoundly moving. She spoke about McKinley's broken promises, the betrayal, and pointedly mentioned the lack of support or remorse shown by his family.
Wow. Those statements are so important for reminding everyone of the human costs, the grief behind the legal proceedings.
Absolutely. Her words really underscored the personal tragedy, the devastation, the sense of betrayal felt by everyone who loved Melody.
And McKinley's sentence.
Mandatory life in prison, with no possibility of parole.
Life without parole. That reflects the severity of the conviction, the finality of it all.
It does. It's the maximum penalty for those crimes. But the legal story isn't quite finished, is it?
Right. You mentioned Dakota Van Patten and Logan Kimpton. What's happening with them?
Their trials are still pending. Dakota's is scheduled for March 2025, and Logan's has been rescheduled for April 2025.
So while McKinley's case is resolved, the process continues for the other two implicated. Their trials might shed even more light, bring out different details or perspectives.
It's possible. We might learn more about the specific roles each person played, maybe more about motivations as those cases unfold.
It's just, Melody Hoffman's story is so incredibly heartbreaking. This whole deep dive just reveals such a complex, disturbing chain of events.
It really does. And despite McKinley's conviction, like you said, the precise why behind this brutality might always remain somewhat unclear. It really highlights how hard it can be to fully grasp the reasons for such violence, even when the evidence points to who did it.
Absolutely. The legal closure is there with the conviction, but the underlying reasons, they remain doubly troubling.
When you think back on everything we've discussed the digital trail McKinley left, all that physical evidence in the car, the testimonies, the photos, what really stands out to you? What questions are still lingering for you after digging into this?
For me, it's partly the planning aspect revealed by the Walmart trip and the searches, and then the stark contrast between that planning and the, frankly, confusing and shifting stories afterwards. And you.
I think for me, it's the vulnerability of Melody, given her intellectual disability and how that trust might have been exploited, and just the sheer senselessness of it all. It makes you think about the different roles everyone played, right?
Yeah.
How did Logan's initial involvement contribute, even if he backed out? What was the dynamic between McKinley and Dakota?
Exactly. And it really hammers home how crucial digital evidence has become in solving crimes like this. Those phone searches, the location data, the photos, they told a story McKinley couldn't easily talk his way out of.
Definitely. So for you listening, maybe this deep dive leaves you wondering about those upcoming trials for Dakota Van Patten and Logan Kimpton. What might come out there?
Or perhaps it makes you reflect more broadly on trust, how fragile it can be, and the absolutely devastating consequences when it's betrayed in such an extreme, violent way. It's a stark reminder of the human tragedy at the heart of these cases.